Okay. Let's see. We'll just wait a minute for people to join us, and hopefully we get Nadine on the line as well. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to take a minute to ensure as many people are with us in the room before we start our talk. Okay. Okay, Nadine is going to join us in a minute, so we'll be ready to go then. Thank you for joining us. Sorry for the delay. Okay, we're good to go. Hello, everyone. Hello, Nadine.
Hello.
Hi. Okay.
I made it. I made it.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Super excited to be hosting and super honored to be hosting this roundtable discussion today. This is our Women's Roundtable, Starting, Growing, and Scaling a Business. And this is brought to you by Founder Institute Qatar Chapter. So I'm just going to be sharing a very short presentation about what we're covering today, and then we'll get right to it. Sorry, hang on. It gets a bit difficult when we're talking about tech-based businesses, and sometimes technology is just not your best friend, but hopefully today, today will play nicely. So can everyone see my screen? Yeah. Okay. So as we said, today it's the Women's Roundtable, a space for us to share, but more importantly, as I said, and I always say, we don't have these conversations in isolation. We want everyone to be joining in the conversation because whether we like it or not, men constitute the bigger part of the entrepreneurial ecosystems. And I think for us to have these open discussions and open conversations are very beneficial for everyone, just to make sure there is inclusion, there is empowerment, and there is enabling in every possible way. So we're talking about starting, growing, and scaling a business, and we will put in an emphasis on the tech-based businesses or tech-enabled businesses. Sorry, hang on a second. Again, as I said, today's not my day. Anyway, the agenda, I'm just going to give you a very brief intro on Founder Institute and what it's all about. And then I'm going to ask each of our lovely panelists today to kind of introduce what she does and how she has a role, or what her role is within the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And then we're going to have a roundtable discussion, followed by taking your questions. And then, of course, we're going to invite you to an after-event networking on AirMeet. And the very powerful producer for today's event, Katie Mapondera, is also co-director of the Qatar Institute chapter, and Qatar Founder Institute chapter, and she will be sharing all the links for you in the chat. So Founder Institute is the first place, and it's the #1 place because in numbers, it is the biggest around the world at this point in time, pre-seed accelerator that not only helps ideas turn into fundable startups, it also helps the startups get into global business. And I think we all now are relating to the concept of born globals, the concept of internationalized and globalized businesses, because the economies are, and technology is enabling us to be much closer to any and every market around the world. Now, the what the Founder Institute started in 2009, and to date it has over 5,300 alumni of its core programs, with an estimated $1.5 billion that have been raised from investors, $25 billion in collective value of the whole portfolio. It's 90 plus countries, and within these countries, and it's about 200 cities at this point in time. We have over 25,000 mentors and advisors and leaders of the chapters of the cities, and about 2,500 investors are joining the network as well, which ensures and is giving a better advantage to the startups to get that investment for further growth and scaling. What does the Founder Institute believe? That great entrepreneurs, and it's about the people again, they're everywhere, and they just need to be empowered to build up the ecosystems of where they are and to build up impactful businesses, and the accelerators help do just that. So that is the core program, and it tells you what to do next, who to talk to, and everything in between. As the Qatar chapter of the Founder Institute, we still have 2 more events coming up, so we would love for you to join us. And again, Katie will be sharing the links to these events for you to register. We have the startup funding in Doha, how to raise money, and I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in that. Everyone with a startup and everyone looking to scale, investment is a crucial or an integral element and ingredient in this. And we have Engineer to Entrepreneur, the startup basics for techies, those that went from this career to that career and what happened in between. And then we have our VIP pitch mixer, and that is for everyone who does enroll in the program, and this will be with all the mentors. Program starts in March 22nd, and this is the application, fi.co/apply/Qatar is how you get in the program now. And we still have the early bird until February 6th, so you might as well get some savings as well on your financials. Now, without further ado, in alphabetical order. So today I have very empowering and amazing entrepreneurs, founders, enablers, enticers, educators. That's how I think of the entrepreneurial system right now, the ecosystem. We have the enticers, those that are like, come on, you could do this. The educators and kind of getting everyone excited about the entrepreneurship. We have the educators, the incubators, the accelerators, and everyone within the ecosystem that is trying to support the education and the enable or the empowerment of the entrepreneurs with the knowledge and with the tactics and with the techniques. And we have the enablers such as the investors, and we have a couple on board today telling them how to move forth and how to take their idea. So Astrid Shadid, hi Astrid. Astrid is the regional director for the Latin American Caribbean for the annual investment summit. Dr. Luana Ozamala, a fellow co-director of the Qatar chapter. She's the founder and CEO of DIMA, Development Impact Managers and Advisors. Sorry if I didn't get that right, but I'm sure I did. And she's also an investor, and she also started up the first fund for Black-owned businesses in Brazil. So this is definitely something to celebrate. Nadine Zerini is the Innovation Fund Manager of Harvard University. So of course, we don't need to introduce Harvard University. We know that's it's a big name. It's a big name and an enabler in the system. We have Sunna Sulkhraisha here from Qatar. Very proud to have her with us on the panel today. She is the founder of Educarso. And I want to say that she is an industry disruptor, because it's all about enabling the deaf and the hard of hearing in getting the education that they deserve by putting up all the courses into sign language and making it that platform that is catering for them for the first time ever in Qatar, I believe so. And I'll ask all of them to introduce themselves later, but I just couldn't help but introduce all the ladies. And of course, last but not least, we have Sophie Smith as another disruptor in women health, in the femtech field, with being the founder and CEO of Nafta Health. And that is catering for something that we don't talk about or we don't cater to a lot within the region, and that is the holistic health and well-being of women. So without further ado, I don't want to be taking up more time than I should when we do this, but I'm going to ask you ladies, please. Let's start again in alphabetical order. Astrid, would you please tell us a bit more about what you do and your role and involvement within the entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Yes, of course. And before everything, I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all the FI Qatar team. I'm truly, truly honored to be here. And moreover, with all these amazing women, it's, I mean, it's overwhelming, but I'm so glad in these times where sorority is of quite importance and is taking a lot of place in our lives, not only for women, but also men are starting to understanding, and especially in the region I work, it's quite an honor to be growing with this type of women. So thank you so much for having me. And well, in what I do, what I dedicate myself for is in Latin America, in this region, that's it has a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities because of many characteristics, such as the population bonus and the location. So women are just waiting on that opportunity to make the jump and to make a powerful presentation of all the capabilities. So what I do is I enable connections to build business ecosystems between the region, throughout the region, and also I connect all these ecosystems with the Middle East, especially with UAE, through the annual investment meeting, which is a platform for investment where we connect interesting projects with interested investors, but also not only investors, but also buyers. So we promote the internationalization of SMEs and startups of nine verticals of technology and innovation. And also at the local level, we work with FI, of course, with FI in Monterrey in the north of Mexico, where we accelerate very interesting projects. And we've had our first cohort. It was quite successful with 39 founders and 11 graduates. And out of the 11, 9 of them are very impactful innovation initiatives. So I'm very, very glad to share that with you. And I don't want to take more of this wonderful panel, but that's about it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, Astrid. Thank you for everything. Okay, well, we have Luana. Luana, would you please share from your end what you do, what DEMA is about, and what the fund is about?
Yes, good evening, ladies, and everybody in the audience, hopefully some men as well. So it's really great to be here. I have been really looking forward to this roundtable. My name is Luana Ozimela. I'm a Brazilian national, but I have been living in different parts of the world for a number of years. And I also have a number of businesses in different parts of the world, including Latin America, the US, Qatar, and also the African continent, Rwanda and Nigeria. So I have ties with a number of regions around the world. And I started in, let's say, IT tech career. I used to be a project manager for Hewlett-Packard in Brazil. Then I decided to do a shift and go into economics. I wanted to focus on race disparities, race and gender disparities. And I did a PhD on that in the UK. And after that, I went full blown into policy, international development policy. I worked for a multilateral bank in the US. And I worked for a small but very impactful team within a multilateral that was responsible for making the case on investing in women to the governments. And I participated in almost $500 million in projects with governments, like giving governments loans in order to promote gender and race equality. And then more recently, 4 years ago, I decided to leave not leave international development, but leave the multilateral and start my own business in Qatar. I saw an opportunity to use my knowledge, the knowledge that I had gained working in policy, but then to the benefit of the private sector. And now I'm much more involved into making the business case and helping companies, large or small, make the business case on investing in women and Afro-descendants and indigenous people and LGBTQI populations around the globe. So that's my mission. It's really making financial markets more diverse, more inclusive, and getting more assets being managed by diverse populations. So I'm really glad to be here, and I want to share so much with you all.
I love that. Thank you so much, Luana. Nadine, Harvard University.
Pressure is on.
No pressure, no pressure. It's just a discussion with all of us.
Of course. So hi, everyone. It's very nice to meet you all. And it's very nice to just share the space with so many impressive and successful women. So my name is Nadine. I am an American immigrant. As the title here says, I work at Harvard University. I'm also an alumna of Harvard University. And I was actually from the Middle East. So I am born and raised I'm Syrian Lebanese. So I know the area, I know the region very well. I was just recently in Qatar, spent 3 amazing weeks over there where it was nice and warm versus the cold here in Boston. And it was just lovely. And my connection to the area is very deep in terms of I would love to support and help the women specifically, but also everyone that is involved in innovation and entrepreneurship in the area. But we can go back to that later. A little bit about my experience and my work. I focus on internal innovation. So other names that we could call it, I don't think we've decided on a specific name for it. So let's just call it corporate entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship. It's the innovation that comes within organizations. And I think this is very timely and very fitting right now as we move into post-COVID, and we're trying to recover and find ways to move forward with what we call the new normal, because we're assuming that nothing's going to go back to how it was. This is a great time to innovate. And so this is where the bulk of my experience lies. Of course, as a student, I was involved with a lot of initiatives and ventures that have drastically failed. And I'd love to share my experiences around that and then the lessons learned around that as well. But overall, I'm very happy to be here sharing this space and starting this conversation, and hopefully, and looking forward to where it will take us, really. And I'm happy to share my experience as well with everyone and all of you.
Thank you, Nadine. Sundus.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. I'm honored to be here, to be part of this event, and happy to meet you all. I am Sundus Al-Kharasha, founder of Educarson. It's an online education platform designed for deaf and hearing impaired. What we are trying to do is to make a huge impact in education and make it more accessible and reachable to the minority of the people, especially deaf students. So, I did the research before, and I found it around 446 million around the world they have hearing disabilities. So our solution, trying to help them and make education accessible to them, especially it is the most important thing in the world. If you raise the education in the country, it would be more powerful of that. So and we are trying to put some of innovation in our solution. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm happy to be with you and to discuss furthermore whatever you want to discuss about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sundus. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Sophie, another industry disruptor. Would love to know more from your end.
So Sophie Smith, founder and CEO of Nafta Health. We are a hybrid healthcare company for women. Hybrid healthcare being a term that we coined actually long before COVID, and a unique model that takes existing integrated care models and layers 3 pillars over the top. Patient or women centricity, augmented intelligence, so combining clinician, artificial and women or female intelligence in a very specific way along clinical pathways, and then decentralization. And our objective is to accelerate the detection, diagnosis and treatment of chronic diseases in women in emerging markets. So Middle East, Africa and South Asia, understanding that today there are significant disparities in health outcomes in women of Middle East, African and South Asian origin, because as well as women having been excluded largely from clinical trials until 1994, today 92% of clinical trials occur in the US and Europe, and the remaining 8% mostly occur in the Far East, where they have to be demographically representative. So our populations are always minority populations, and you see the effect of that in health outcomes. For example, women of African origin in the UK are 4 times more likely to die of complications during pregnancy and childbirth than white Caucasian women. So our aim is to build a woman-centric model of care that is really truly scalable and delivers better health outcomes for women, not just within the region, but globally, but focus on women in the region. And then to take the data and the insights that we have for populations here and use them to address some of the systemic racial and also gender biases that we see in healthcare around the world.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Sophie. And thank you for actually pioneering in this field where we're talking about hybrid health and we're talking about minorities and we're bringing up the statistics. And I think this is very important when it's not just a business. And I think this is something that Founder Institute as well aligns so much with it. It's about the impact that we want to create and the betterment of the communities where we operate and those where we can reach. So that's beautiful. Thank you for that. Okay, so ladies, I want to start with, let me just get everyone in the spotlight. There we go. Okay. No, hang on, sorry. Remove the spotlight. How do we do this? I was just, oh, there, spotlight for everyone. Okay, so I want to start with a very apparent question that goes, what is the biggest challenge when we talk about women in business? And the second part of the question, what is the bigger challenge when we talk about women in the tech business or starting up a tech-based business or a tech-enabled business? Actually, Sophia, I want to start with you for that question, please.
Oh dear, this is always one of these questions that is like opening a Pandora's box. And you're meant to sound really positive about everything, and it's hard. So Wanda has just published a report on investment into female-founded companies in the MENA region, and it showed that although the region has had a record year last year in terms of investment, over $2 billion invested, a measly 1.2% went into female-founded companies, and about an additional 7% went into co-led companies. Which is, from a female founder perspective, it's roughly half proportionately what it was 2 years ago. So the pandemic has actually had an adverse effect on the ability for women to secure venture capital. And there are a few reasons for this. I think there were fewer deals and the deals were larger. And at the moment, there's a real problem in the ecosystem with women finding it very difficult to secure funding at the pre-seed and seed stages, which is when, as a business and as a founder, you are judged purely based on your potential. There have been numerous studies done now that show that within the workplace and as entrepreneurs, women tend to be judged much more harshly when you don't have the traction and the revenues and the unit economics to back you up. You only have your potential to go with. And so at the pre-seed and seed stages, when that's all that there is, women really struggle to get funding. And if they do get funding, they tend to get their valuations squeezed. I think historically as women, you know, and it probably dates back to, like, initially it was probably a kind of physical thing. You're told, don't put yourself out there, don't draw too much attention to yourself. You know, you're too flash, that thing that you're wearing is too short, you're too exposed, you're too uncovered, And so as soon as people say to us, we're too much of anything, you know, the valuation is too high, you're kind of overvaluing yourself, you're putting yourself out there too much. I think a lot of women go, oh no, maybe they're right, you know, maybe my valuation is too high. And because we don't want to give away more than a certain percentage of our business, we're told, in fact, that you should aim to give away maximum 10 to 15% of your business with every funding round, so that you keep a good amount of the equity and so that you can raise subsequent rounds. When women are told your valuation cap is too high, then they reduce the valuation cap, but they also reduce the ask. And this has happened with almost basically every female founder I speak to kind of chat about our experience in the ecosystem, or often they reach out for advice. They'll have put $500,000 down as the amount they want to raise. And when I see them and they take me through the deck, it's 200,000. So it's not only, it's been more than halved. And we sit and we look at the numbers, and suddenly the numbers don't make sense. You know, you kind of look at it and you go, well, but you don't have anybody, you know, you're wanting to scale up operations, but you don't have anybody in customer services. You know, are you going to be doing, as you're growing and bringing in more orders, are you going to be managing the entire supply chain yourself? Where are these people? You know, where's the money? And they go, well, we had that in, but then we were told you're not going to get that valuation. That valuation is too high, so we just cut them out of our budget. And that's dangerous, because then what happens is women don't raise enough money, so they don't get to the next stage. So then they have to raise a bridging round, and then another bridging round. Every time their financial sense and their ability to run a business and to understand how much they want to raise being called into question. And so there are these obstacles, like these little almost imperceptible obstacles, that prevent women from getting to the stage where they could really take off, which I think is probably at Series A, because at Series A, suddenly it's a growth round, and you've got the unit economics, and you're being judged based on what you've achieved, and you've proven the market, and you're good to go. So I think the more we can do actively to get women through the pre-seed and seed stages, and to make sure that they stick to their guns in terms of how they value themselves and their companies and the amounts that they want to raise, the better it will be for female founded businesses in the region.
Thank you, Sophie. That's very interesting. And yes, I definitely resonate with the conditioning of the you can't, you won't, you shouldn't. And that kind of translates into a lot of what we do in life. And I know that personally, I speak very publicly about it and very openly about how I'm healing myself from these limitations and this conditioning and reconditioning what I am able to do. Astrid, from that perspective of what Sophie shared and from an investment perspective, do you share that investors or investment or access to funding is one of the biggest challenges that women would have in running a business or starting and growing a business, or do you see any other challenges, and especially in the tech field?
Definitely, that's one of the biggest challenges. I mean, it's been growing for years, and it's almost accepted by everyone. So it's rare, and it's starting only to be seen, but it doesn't have that exposure. It doesn't have that recognition right now. But definitely, yes. I mean, it's even sometimes unconscious made by the investors. It's some other elements that are influencing these decisions. But what we can do, I believe, is give our women entrepreneurs the confidence, the information, the preparation they need in order to tackle this big challenge. Because let's be real, we as women, we need to be even more prepared and dedicate more time, and in the midst of also taking care of family, in the midst of also taking care, having these responsibilities in our back, so that the struggle is even bigger. And well, another challenge I would like to add, and it's so current right now, and hopefully it will not be present in the next few years, but right now also pandemic also play. I didn't want to bring it up, but especially
it's very valid.
Yes, especially for working women. I mean, if you have to take care of your child taking classes, and of your child connecting and making homework, and you don't even have the proper space in your house, or your partner, he doesn't understand quite that well the situation. It's struggling so much in that you struggle first with that, and then with everything else you have to do. So
And then with the business dynamics.
Sorry.
Yep. And then you struggle with the business dynamics and everything internal and external that you have to deal with. Yep.
Correct. It sounds basic, but I mean, we have pandemic has shown us that we have to slow down and release control of everything that's not in our hands, and just do it gracefully, because otherwise you'll get sick, you'll get anxious, and you don't have the former outlets, just such as being in the outside, to let it go. Like sometimes even the commute, it helps out. Maybe when you were commuting to work, you used to listen to podcasts and just relax in the way, and just get some other things prepared and ready. Now that you don't have commute, and your commute is only from the bedroom to the office, it takes you away maybe me time, like time with you to think, to plan, to reflect, to meditate in something that you want to do. That's in the personal way of view, but related to tech specifically and our thing today, I believe that also another issue that has to be addressed, especially in Latin America, because in the US it's and Nadine will correct me if I'm wrong. In the US, it's now even easier. They have reached very, very nice levels of women in these positions of decision positions, and they are decision makers in the VC and in the investor side. But over here in Latin America, we don't have that yet. Numbers are scary. They are very, very low. So when you don't have on the other side of the table another woman that can empathize with you in all the struggles that you have, and in all the challenges that you have to unlock, to be sitting there with a project, with a pitch, with an amazing maybe some breakthrough in the science or in tech, and she doesn't empathize with you, and maybe it's a man, and maybe it's a man with conditions, that preconditioned to not believe in the capability of women, you'll struggle a little bit more. So that's the issue. We don't have women in investment positions that can relate to our issues.
Well, I think it was Harvard Business Review. I was doing the research on the statistics, and I think it was Harvard Business Review that quoted that not more than 12% of decision makers within the VCs are women. And that in itself, and not more than 3% are the founders, which brings me to Luana. As an investor and as a person who, you know, kind of made it their passion and their mission in life to change these inequalities and make an impact. How do you see the challenges? Is it about the funding? Is it about the decision making, or the women as decision makers? Or what would be a bigger challenge for women in tech or women in business generally?
Yeah, so, I was so amazed to read some recent statistics from the World Economic Forum that show that it will take for the world to achieve gender parity in different spheres, but particularly on the economic one, where there is the largest gaps. It will take about 108 years, right? And for example, for the region, the Middle Eastern and MENA region, will take 153 years. And for North America, 165 years. So when we are talking about gender disparities in general, even though North America, there is so much hype and heat around having gender lens funds and gender-led VC and thematic instruments and everything, yet that is still not enough to really accelerate the pace of closing existing gender disparities. So it's just amazing. Even though we are all here, and I totally agree with the comment, we need to have more women writing checks. We need to have more women of color writing checks. But what else needs to be done, to accelerate? We know now in Qatar is in statistics, I know for a fact, we presented this recently. We know that women in STEM fields now graduate at a parity with men. We have about 48% of graduates in STEM field being a woman, being women. So we know that it's not anymore about that pipeline problem, right? It's not a pipeline problem. We have that pipeline, but that now, how do we effectively are able to really tap that talent pool, right, that we are producing? And then obviously I come from an economics background, and in economics we talk about human capital formation and skills, and but there is also gender norms. There is also family constraint, right? There is the issue of capital. Obviously, it's always at the top 3, right? If not top 1, generally, But what about all those issues? The gender norms, the family constraints. How do we build ecosystems, right? Tech ecosystems that are capable, right, of creating an offering of money and services, right? So that women entrepreneurs can fully participate, right? And are able to accumulate capital as an individual for their families, and also make their companies growth in revenue, etc. So I think this is it's a big issue, but I think I am very optimistic that we are closer to the solution by building alliances that are global, that are focused on results, right, and effective results, and that are focused on a comprehensive solution. It's not just about one or the other. It's not just about the check. It's not just about having one woman at the board of that in that investment committee. It starts from that, but we need to think systemic change, right? We need to think from the private and from the public sector as well, what regulators need to be doing.
I love that, Luana. Nadine, now we're talking about, Luana brought up the issue of, and of course, also part of the research, like how can we empower more women, is like encourage them to go into STEM. And STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics studies. But as Luana was saying, the statistics are supporting that more women are in STEM. From being in STEM and just the education part to actually taking out a career and then becoming kind of fostering this entrepreneurial spirit to be able to come out with business that is innovation driven, that is innovation based, or is it just about the funding? So where do we see this from your perspective? Is the challenge, is it just about the education part, or is it about the cohesiveness and the integration of the ecosystem, all of it, to get to another very important element of funding?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. And I want to build, I agree with Luana. I think she's made great points. So has Astrid and Sophie. But I want to build on Luana's points. I think that there are some systemic changes required to be able to encourage or create that ecosystem. I've also read throughout my research on the World Economic Forum and the World Bank, it looks like there is a lot of an increase, a significant increase in the female citizens or of the MENA region, where they're trying to get into the STEM fields in terms of education, but that's not translating into the working world. So what we understand from this is they're graduating, they're studying, so the talent's there, but it's not being pursued. So that we're not proceeding with that. And I think that there are different elements or factors that affect that. It's not just the funding, although funding is definitely very important, and it does get the regulators involved in some policies set in place, especially in the MENA region. I do think that there is a little bit of a social pressure growing up in the Middle East. I know that there is a very big pressure on the woman to actually, sure, you want to get some education, great, but eventually your role is to get married and reproduce and stay at home. So there is that, overarching norm or cultural value that we all grow up on based on our ancestors and our parents and all of that. And so it's very hard for a woman to actually find her own set of mentality and say, maybe I don't choose to maybe that's an option. And maybe I choose another option, and that is to go for a career and own or create something, or be on the road for being a founder of something different. I don't think that is encouraged. And so my suggestion, so that's the first prong of the response to the question. And I would say the best solution, or one suggestion for that, is to create more role models. We do need more role models in the Middle East or in the MENA region for us to show this can be done. And maybe more role models of how women are juggling between having a personal life and a family life and a career at the same time. And maybe it's not necessarily both. They can choose one, and that's okay too. I know that we're in the West, we're ahead with that. So we're not there yet when it comes to the Arab world. The second prong of that question, I would say, is the digital gender gap. And I feel that from the information and the data that I've been reading, again, through my references, is that there's a very big disparity between the female and the male gender gap when it comes to digital information or digital skilling and upskilling and AI and all of that. So, and even access to internet or mobile internet. And I'm wondering why. There are different reasons, I know, and we can talk about those later on. I don't want to extend it if we need to. But also, that is definitely very remarkable, and we definitely need to there's definitely a need to be addressed there in terms of creating, again, more role models, creating the ecosystem. I love the idea, the work that Sophie's been working on, and Sondos as well. We just need more to just show that this can be done and this is successful. I guess the West has started on that a while before, but and it's a work in progress in the Western world or in North America, but it doesn't mean that we can't get started somewhere, and we have. Yeah. I'll come to the last prong of the question, and that is the finance and getting finance, or the structural disadvantages in fundraising and investments. To start with, I think that as a woman, if I can't own an asset, or if I can't have access to capital, or have a bank account in my name, or even inherit, have some sort of a right to an inheritance, which is access to capital, then that's definitely a systemic and a policy work of its own that we need to work on from a regulator perspective. It explains a lot of why we can't have access to capital. It's, there is that great story of, yes, I'll start with the garage, I'll start with the crowd fund, and I'll start with this and that. But a lot of the founders, what we know is they've managed to gather some money from somewhere, or get loans, or get access to credit, or find an investor who actually didn't even think of their gender, that they're women, and think about, well, what's going to happen if when you have children? Like, that's a big question that a lot of investors ask. Well, what happens when you get, which I feel is very invading. Like, what happens when you have a family and your focus changes? Well, what makes you think that my focus will change? Is that, that's an assumption of its own and a bias of its own. And I think that it's very important for women that have some sort of key decision, or have some sort of a role, an impactful role, to be able to be advocates and raise their voice and make the other women's voices heard, because that's how we're able to reach the policy and the change, create the systemic change that we're asking for, so that it can influence and trickle around the social and the structural pressure that we have. I don't know if that made sense, but I hope.
Yeah, it did.
I hope I'm making sense.
It did. Sundus, I'm going to come to you with a question. Now, we came up with funding. We came up with, is it the family regulations? Is it the social conditioning? Is it the access to education in STEM? For you starting up your business here and going through incubation and having that support system, what were your biggest challenges? Especially that you're in a field that is not very common for women to be in.
Yeah, correct. Actually, I was lucky, and alhamdulillah, I want to thank the Digital Incubation Center to helping us and give us the free space and the mentor sessions, and they are helping us even in digital marketing. They are really helpful for and empowering the women around the world, and anyone can have their idea. So what we face as challenge, it's here, every parents and every they are supportive. I don't think that the family they will have they will be supportive and encouraging you to build your own business. But the challenge is really to find the right fund, the right amount of fund to build, to scale up your business, because educators need good amount of fund, and the MENA region, I don't know if they, we have just a few places. Maybe you find a good investor or someone who he is interested in your idea and believe in you and see your role, and to help you. So actually, what we face and what I faced is to get the right amount of fund. But otherwise, it's really grateful and to have this journey to build my business, and hope I have impact.
That's great. Well, Sophie, I want to ask you about something now. From talking to a lot of women, and I know that Luana and Katie and I have discussed this a lot. For a lot of women starting up a tech-based or tech-enabled business, technology in itself could be a little intimidated. And their thought that, I'm not tech savvy, or I'm not going to be the chief technology officer of my business could be an impediment. Is this something that you faced, or was it easy for you to find the providers for the technology part of the business?
So I have a little bit of a weird, I think, tech inroad. Maybe not so weird. I read history at Cambridge. I first became acquainted with digital technologies in any form through the engineering department there, where at the time I was engaged to a guy I didn't end up marrying, a fellow in computer science. He was a sweetheart, but very passive. For those reasons, it didn't last. Ironically, he was studying computer science and was building one of the very, very, very first systems that used Bayesian methods for spoken dialogue management. He was at a time where there were two distinct schools of thought in AI, NLP and probabilistic methods. Now they've combined, but at the time you sat on one side of the fence or the other. And I spent a lot of time sat in the lab with him, training his algorithms, and learned to program, and became interested in, I think, software engineering for the very first time. This company, he ended up setting up a company called Vocal IQ with the pro-vice chancellor of the university that was acquired by Apple for £100 million in 2015. So he did well, and now his new company Bitfount uses federated machine learning, which is also very interesting. It means that rather than bring all the data to you and then get your algorithms to query it and produce the insights or return the insights, you send your algorithms out to distributed data sets, they query them, and then they bring the insights back. So really very good and relevant for healthcare systems or any system where you don't want people to store your data on site. I digress. So I became acquainted with tech through him, really. Applied to Accenture, where I worked as a technology consultant for 4 years, and I did a whole load of I would say reasonably techie things. I spent a lot of time plugged into routers with a bank, not attempting to steal anything, trying to work out whether the circuits were still active or not, and then turning them off. And then I worked with an international contact or telecoms company, creating a new operating model for their contact centers. I was still at a point, so I had a good amount of technology knowledge, but actually not enough that I could build mobile applications from scratch per se.
Yep.
But then I left Accenture in 2014, and I set up a number of companies in fairly rapid succession, 2 of which involved me managing remote or local, in fact, teams of software engineers. One was a doctor finding appointment booking platform that we built in Pakistan, and our team was based between London and Lahore. I spent a lot of time in Pakistan in 2015. And then the other one was a software development company that I used remote teams for, so third-party service providers based out of the UK, and we did mostly mental health tech with Oxford University and a couple of others. With Nafta, our entire tech stack has been in-house, and the initial very, very early stage alpha model that we built, we did with again, a third party. But when we decided that there was going to be a significant amount of, we wanted to incorporate a significant amount of machine learning into the fabric of the platform, we onboarded our current chief technology officer, Dr. Raz Ali, who has a PhD in machine learning and about 20 years now in applied machine learning, mostly in clinical informatics. And this is a role that I could never have had. But I have always been very comfortable, and I think it's important for founders of startups, bringing people on to plug what I acknowledge as very clear gaps in my knowledge base and skill set. And, you know, sure, if I was to take several years out of my life and exclusively program for those few years, could I reach a point where I was able to assemble, you know, AI pad platforms from scratch? Probably, but it's not actually what I want to do. It's not what I'm good at. And so you find people to plug the skill set. I guess the big issue that a lot of founders face is how do you convince somebody with exactly the right skill set to join your company, particularly if it's slightly later on. Maybe there isn't a co-founder role available. Maybe you don't want a co-founder. You just want a really good C-suite, but you don't potentially have the money to pay them yet. Like, how do you convince them to join? And this is where I think mission-driven companies have a real advantage, because it's actually quite easy to find people who align to your mission. We have never struggled to hire people, like good people, into Nafta, or I would say the right people, because as part of our onboarding process or interview process, we force them to answer 2 questions. Why do you want to work in women's health? And why do you want to work for Nafta specifically? And if they can't answer those 2 questions, no matter how good they are, we don't take them forward, because that we know that in the hard times, and as a startup, there are a lot of hard times, those are going to be the things that cause them to stick around. So yeah, it can be, I guess, a couple of points. It's very important to be honest with yourself and identify where the gaps are. And everybody has gaps, and gaps in abundance. Plug them and put the right support system in place. Secondly, if you need somebody who has, I guess, very deep technical skill sets, whether in digital technologies or other, if you're a mission-driven company, it would be easier, but if you're not, try and think coherently about how you could incentivize them through shares that vest over a period, through stock options, through through anything. I mean, in sales, it's easy because you can obviously offer things on commission. But you know, through a split of kind of equity and cash, with a little bit of flexibility about how those things are allocated based on revenue, etc. So there are a couple of things to think about.
Thank you, Sophie. I want to come back, Sunus, as as a founder for a tech-based business, did you find technology, did you find it a challenge or a hurdle, or were you able to source the right people, as Sophie was saying, find the right people to fill in the gaps there?
I agree with Sophie, actually. I am an engineer. I developed part of the platform, but even though you need someone who have more experience in programming, so you need to find the right people to develop what you want in good way. It's really challenging because you have to find good programmer. If you any issue happening, the technology, every time there is an issue with the technology. So that's what I faced.
But technology in itself, you were comfortable again with it because you built part of it. You were very comfortable with the technology. Well, I think that's something that we had discussed before. And even when it's not an MVP, when it's not a full-blown tech-enabled or tech-based business, a website, an e-commerce, something along those lines, that is still technology, and that is still not as intimidating. And that is, again, another tool where technology would support the scalability of a business. And we also need to highlight that. I'm very wary of our time, so I'd like to go back again on in the alphabetical order and ask you the kind of the question before we take the questions from the audience. What would you recommend, or what would be your vision? What would be your dreams in seeing how to close that gap, how to entice more women to start, grow, and scale tech-based, tech-enabled businesses, whether in the region, the Middle East, or around the world? What are your dreams for this, and kind of 2 steps that come along with it, if there are any steps associated with it? So Astrid, I'll go to you first.
Thank you so much. Well, this is quite a good question. First of all, I could expect and hope all the women, either they're in tech or not, to find their voice, to find their purpose, and to find the strength to just go out in the world and be who they want to be. I know there are conditions in many parts of the world that don't allow us to do it. But I would say that this is the best time ever to be a woman in the whole history. We have a very nice support groups, either locally or internationally. There are many tools that we can have access to. I mean, I know that not everyone, but it's the first time ever that it's quite a good number that can drag many other numbers. I wish conditions for women in some places are more challenging than others, but that could be my dream, to make every woman have access to this kind of tools that could make it easier and smoother to have their dreams come true and to find their voice. But I believe that how we can start on first step and second step. First step could be to make our little girls believe it too, to make them know that there are opportunities out there, because sometimes it's even, and I'm speaking personally, I didn't even know what kind of possibilities were there. I was quite a curious child, and I had good opportunities, fortunately, but I didn't know I could maybe be a very good scientist, because I didn't even see the chance or the possibility or study that. I just went with what everyone was saying at the moment. And well, right now, I believe that if I have a small boy, but if I had a small girl, I could just tell her that everything is possible, and just give her the opportunity, the chance to know which are these possibilities. And of course, about educating little boys, and I'm fortunate to have the chance to do that. I want to educate him as a little gentleman that respects women, respects equality, and respects opportunities. And not only because we're women, because we're human beings, and that little and small generations know that and are aware of that, and these generations that are able to control and recognize their feelings and their emotions, and they can work out with them. It's something that I think we didn't have, so we are very fortunate to maybe
changing the
enable
next
for
generation.
them.
Yeah, changing the next generation and enabling them. Luana, from your perspective, what would be your dream or your aspiration, whether to close the gap, to enable more women, and what would be, let's say, one step that we can take towards that?
Yeah, no, awesome question. I think one thing I must say that so virtually everywhere in the world, there are these gender gaps. Okay, it's not something like of one region vis-a-vis the other. Like virtually everywhere, there are gaps, both in participation of women, either in the labor force or as entrepreneurs. And also gaps in how much they make, right? The output that they provide. Yeah. And at the same time, the trend that we have seen historically is that women are becoming more and more and better educated than men, even though these gaps, so the rate with which women are advancing is much faster than the rate with which those gaps are reducing and reclining. So we need to think, we need to be more creative, right? And I go back to that issue I raised about the ecosystem. If we're talking about the innovation and the entrepreneurial ecosystem, we need more programs, which Sophie mentioned, early stage, pre-seed stage. We need to work with the academia. We need to work with the co-working space, with the funds, with training investors, etc. Right? With making the investor pools more diverse. So there needs to be, I think, for me, if we talk about dream, it's every government and every ecosystem, innovation ecosystem enabler, right, that I just mentioned some, should have a concerted effort to do something about it. It's not just, it's not enough, because it's a no-brainer to invest in women-owned business, to invest in women, human capital, etc., etc. So we lose too much. It's too costly not to do anything. So to me, there must be, every single government needs to, and it's not just an exercise of checking boxes, or I am doing an event on Women's Day in March 8th, right? It's not about that. It's really about having an aligned strategy and bringing together all the ecosystem enablers to do something about it that can actually make a difference in this, right?
Yep.
So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Luana. Nadine.
Yeah, I love all this. I think that the first thing that I would recommend and say to every woman out there is reap the opportunities that are available. Don't wait. Don't wait for things to happen. Don't wait for the answer to come. Reap the opportunities and leverage every opportunity that comes your way. There are so many resources out there. This is a time in the world, in different aspects, of course, where women are being talked about as a very major, that have a major role in the workforce. And so take advantage of that opportunity. The COVID time and the post-COVID time and the hybrid world and the hybrid working environment is being talked about right now. Take advantage of that opportunity. There's a time when the world is paying attention to disparities, different disparities. Every nation is looking inward and saying, where can we work on that? Take advantage of that and raise your voice and be advocates. There's a time when to look at our educational system. And this is amazing because now with COVID, we're revising everything, we're reviewing everything in our education. How do we create that space for women to dream, to hope, to think of how they can do better, how they can have a life of their own and of their own choice. So leveraging the free resources out there in terms of learning, in terms of networking. We have access to Zoom, we have LinkedIn Learning, we have all kinds of free learning resources that are very legitimate and credible out there. And these are great resources that we can take advantage of with internet access. I want to talk about the men's roles and as mothers, as sisters, as wives, it's very important to have that discussion with our brothers, our fathers, our husbands, our sons as well, and how they can be allies, how they can be advocates. Because at some point it's going to be their daughter, it's going to be their mother, their sister. So how do we engage them in that conversation where they can advocate for us? Well, they can't advocate for us, but they will advocate and bring us into the conversation. Yeah. Yes, and have and open up some space or encourage our seat at the table. I think an early stage seeding or funding is very important, but also creating that room and space for people, especially women, especially people of different color, different gender, different, disabilities, to test their ideas and fail safe. And I want to underscore failure here. It's okay to fail. There is a very big regional value that's that connotation of failure is bad. We cannot fail. No. Failure is very good when it comes to entrepreneurship and innovation, and we want to encourage that. And fail safe, fail quickly, fail forward, if you can.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you. Sundus, we spoke about finding your voice, capitalizing on the resources available to you, engaging the governments and the institutions and the enablers within the system. What would be your dream or the step you see from your perspective?
The dream that to find more women, they pursue their dream and to achieve what they want, to see what their dream come true. They don't have to be scared about failure. Maybe and just to take the first step, then everything will be good for them. They will find the helpful they need. In Qatar, they are really great incubators, and they will find what the help and the right mentors. I encourage them, and I hope maybe we find more women, and they are not a lot of women. I find they are actually, but maybe because if there is a narrow of the time and they have a lot of responsibility around and in their day, but they have to pursue their dream and to try to make impact in the life.
Thank you. Sophie.
I'm going to answer a question about dreams. I'm not sure about dreams, but I can tell you what we are materially doing to shift the paradigm a little bit. And that is with the support now of a steerco comprising 30 individuals in the kind of startup ecosystem, 15 women and 15 men. We have launched a movement called the 2022 Female Angels Movement to identify and list publicly 2022 female angel investors for emerging markets by the end of 2022. And I'm going to put the link in the chat.
Please share. That is amazing.
So because of the gap, and initially what we want to do is get more women putting their capital to work and get more women thinking about investing and what it means to have diversified portfolios and putting more wealth into women. A secondary consequence of that we perceive will be more investments into female founded companies. There was a study done recently on female billionaires and male billionaires about where they put their money, and I think it was about 7% of male billionaires invested in female founded companies and about 14% into co-led. And in women, it was like 24 and 24%. So immediately almost 50% of businesses had at least one female founder or woman in the leadership team. And so statistically, if there are more female investors, we're more likely to see female-led and founded companies being funded. But initially for 2022, our aim is just to list all of these investors publicly. We are compiling a few tools for them to access, not us, that are not created by us, but for example, we're partnering with Female Invest, which has a subscription based platform that educates women about becoming investors. Quite a number of the angel investors that we have on the list today have either just made their first investments or are thinking about making their first investments. And so we want to ensure that although our only KPI is the 2022 female angel investors by the end of the year, we're putting in place some foundations to allow them to kind of take it forward on their own and, you know, explore investing through syndicates, becoming limited partners, being a little bit more creative with their capital. And people say, you know, are you going to hit the 2022 target? I'm convinced that we are, but even if we don't, even if we get to 200 female angel investors, 300 female angel investors, when we, out of frustration, launched the movement, in the only public list of angel investors for the region, which was hosted by Menabites, there were 2 female angel investors. So already today, with nearly 50, I actually need to update the list, we've 25x to that, which, as any good investor will tell you, is an excellent return on investment. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
That's amazing. That's amazing, and that's a great initiative. Exactly.
We are also launching a syndicate in Brazil with Black Women Investment Club. It will be like also first. So we really need to connect offline.
Yes, I was thinking, I'm like, you guys have to connect. Yeah. And with Astrid as well, with everything she's doing with the annual investment meeting. So this is amazing. So ladies, thank you so much. We have a few questions and I know we went overboard and I apologize to everyone, but thank you for sticking around with us. First, I'd like to thank you all. This has been really insightful. I know we can have multiple sessions and every time we'll be unveiling something else we need to nip at the, or treat or heal at the root to be able to empower and enable women entrepreneurs from around the world within the starting, scaling, growing and scaling a business. Let me just go quickly and I'll ask the questions that came in and I would ask you please if you could briefly respond to them. Sundus, the first question is for you actually. Can you talk about your experience with fundraising and was gender an obstacle in your journey?
Actually, I didn't.
This is a question from Safa.
Thank you, Safa. Actually, I didn't go with the funding. I was lucky to be winner of the idea camp in second place. So the prize was 100,000 Qatar riyal of. So I used it to fund my startup. I didn't go in fundraising and find any.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I cannot help you with this. Actually, I hope, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sophie, in your experience, do men favor investing in men or assume women are not trustworthy of accomplishing the required mission? That's a deep one.
It is. I think I would recommend to everybody that they read Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez, who talks about unconscious bias. And I think most people do not discriminate in either direction or in any way consciously. Some people do, and they shouldn't be allowed to invest, but most bias is unconscious. And I think it happens in all areas. It happens with women, full stop. It happens when they become mothers, and suddenly they have quite clear caregiving obligations. It happens from a racial perspective as well. I would say it happens probably less here in the Middle East and in Dubai in particular than it does in the US, but it still happens. And I think it's mostly unconscious. And if I just take parenting as an example, in general, when a man starts a family, this is perceived as a strength. You know, suddenly he is dependable. He has something that is giving him focus. He has something that he's fighting for. It makes him a better and more reliable employee. You know, he's definitely going to work really hard because he's got his family to provide for. When women become mothers, the opposite thing happens. Suddenly, you know, they've got family that are going to distract them. They're going to be distracted. They're not going to be committed to their work. They're going to have other duties, other obligations. And so a family for a man is a form of empowerment, and for women it has precisely the opposite effect. And I don't think most of the time we register this consciously. I think it happens unconsciously. Yep. So I would say that unconscious bias is the biggest obstacle to women progressing in every sphere of life, whether it's in the workforce or as entrepreneurs. And the sooner that we can take small steps to address that, the better.
Thank you. Luana, same, still from Safa, she made sure to ask everyone a question. As a woman of color, do you recommend approaching VCs who support minorities instead of targeting the ideal VC in terms of portfolio and sector?
Don't know if I understood the question.
Like, is there a better chance for a woman of color, if she is a woman of color, would she have a better chance at funding if she invests someone who invests in minorities, or just go for the best VC possible or the best option possible?
That assuming that the minority-led VC is not the best, right? There is an implicit bias.
There's an underlying assumption there. Exactly.
Yeah, let's highlight that. I mean, thematic VCs, that we call it, right? Or diverse-led VCs, not that we should separate. There is minority-led, and then the ones that have the thesis, the investment thesis, it's embedded the issue of reducing racial equities, gender inequalities, etc. Right? So a diverse lens in your investment and the leadership, right? So that it's different. Some have both. Some is just minority-led. It can be Ariel Ventures is minority-led, is one of the most established and the highest performing asset management companies in the United States, right? So, okay. I mean, let's separate. So let's focus on the lens, right? Funds that have the gender or diversity lens. They came about for a reason. Minority entrepreneurs, for reasons Sophie raised, the implicit bias or direct discrimination, really, in the case of the United States, didn't have access, right? So they need to create those funds in order to increase the access. In cases of Brazil, where discrimination or segregation is not legal, is illegal, but it happens, those funds, historically what we created, it was a complete segregation in financial markets. 99.999% are white men writing the checks in Brazil, right? And 56% of this population is Black. And so this created a huge abysm in separating. Blacks do not know anybody who writes checks. So you need, in contexts like that, you need also thematic funds, people writing checks, because there is an issue of trust. For example, fund managers in Brazil, because they are white, because they are not close to minority-led issues, they don't want even to hear pitch, even though they can invest in beauty, they don't want to hear pitches of people who invest in curly hair, because they, you know, it just doesn't come by. I'm just giving a silly example, I know, but what I'm saying is there is an issue of proximity of the two worlds that need to exist in order for trust to be built, you know? So there are studies on this. A minority-led and minority-led and diverse lens fund is much more likely to write larger checks, to write more checks to minority entrepreneurs, to write more checks, and insist that the composition of boards become more diverse in those invested companies. So, I mean, there is a reason for them. So for me, it's hard to say where best to go. There are a lot
of other factors that contribute to this decision. Yeah,
exactly. I think we could summarize that way.
No, can I just on that, we have a really funny issue. Like, you could ask the same question: is it better as a woman to apply to a fund that has a female GP, at least one female GP in the kind of management team? And in the region, we have this really bizarre issue where I think female GPs are so afraid of people realizing that they're women and that they might think differently and put forward different opportunities for investment or back different things, that with us, the funds that we've applied for where there's been a female GP, the female GP has actually recused herself because in our case, this one was sat on the board of another femtech company based out of Europe, different market, not a competitor of ours, doing something completely differently. And she said that she believed there to be a conflict, but I think really there was fear. Like, she was so afraid that she's going to be outed for, you know, changing the narrative. But that's what we need female GPs to do. The whole point is we don't like the existing narrative. Yeah, you know, we want different companies to be invested in. You know, we need a period of 5 to 10 years where systematically venture capital funds write checks for things that make them deeply, deeply uncomfortable. And they're going to make them uncomfortable because they haven't invested in them before. And they need to do it. And they need to say, you know, 20% of this fund that we close is going to go into stuff that we have never invested in. And most of the time, we're going to be like, sign the checks with our eyes closed.
Let's see where this goes. I was actually talking with a counselor, and we were talking about this issue, and she said something along the lines of that as females, we have to embrace a lot more of our masculine energy within the workplace and within the decision-making process. So we are not judged and we are not ostracized for kind of the sympathy or empathy that need to be embraced. And what we need to do is ask both women and men to embrace more of the feminine energy when it comes to the decision-making process within work decisions. Well, actually, Sophie, the next question is for you from Golnosh. And she says, if you have tackled any topics that are controversial in the MENA region, and hang on, I lost that. No, okay. And if we need, especially when it comes to women's health, and how do we go about tackling these issues? Specifically that you were saying, well, like, what do we be careful about, or what do we shy away from? Especially that you were talking about, you know, this is something, we're talking about a holistic wellness here, and bringing up topics that weren't even part of the conversation before. So from a business perspective, how did that come up for you?
I think in general, so that there's two sides to it. There's how do you engage your customers, your consumers, and how do you engage with the business population where you're trying to make a change and establish an ecosystem and shift the paradigm a little bit. With our consumers, we share with our users. We share a lot of very I would say anatomically relevant information, and information in a form that it can be accessed, but that also isn't going to cause offense. We acknowledge that a lot of women's health issues are still considered extremely taboo, and what we don't want to do is have people land on our platform and feel so embarrassed because of something that we put in front of them, you know, feel so worried that someone else is going to come upon it, that they're going to immediately delete the app, or they're going to hide it and never engage with us again. We are proudly by the region, for the region company, and so we operate within cultural norms, but we also push the boundaries all the time. And certainly in terms of our business ecosystem, we talk very openly about women's health issues across the 4 verticals that we cover, so health, fertility, pregnancy, menopause, and have very open and frank conversations that usually I'm only told about afterwards may have been slightly too much. So for example, I had an interview on Dubai Eye yesterday where we were talking about menopause, and then talking about male menopause, and talking about sperm count and quantity and motility, and the fact that globally sperm count has dropped by 50% in the past 30 years, that it's tending to zero by 2040, And afterwards, I have a load of people going, oh, I didn't know that you could say sperm so many times in a single radio conversation. And it hadn't even occurred to me like that I was doing it, because it's just part and parcel of the day-to-day. So I think it's very important, you know, again, we interface with women who suffer obstetric violence, who never get to say hello or goodbye to stillborn babies, who suffer the indignity of hysterectomies in their 20s and 30s because doctors can't be bothered to remove a cyst or a fibroid, who lose their lives, lose battles to cancer because they've been too ashamed to and too afraid to deal with a lump that they found on their breast, and so they only go and see somebody at stage 4. When you're faced with in Kenya, 50% of women that are pregnant are under the age of 19, because there's a very localized industrial focus in Kenya. And so if there's a flux within an industry, an entire county can go out of business effectively for a number of months. And when that happens, young girls turn to prostitution, and that's how they bring income into a household. And so there are a lot of under 19-year-old pregnant women in Kenya. When you're dealing with women's lives, you cannot be too afraid to speak out and to talk about and to confront these issues, because in the 21st century, the fact that women still live with the health issues that they have and suffer the indignities they have is an outrage that cannot be ignored.
That's very true. Thank you for doing something about it. Ladies, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who joined us today. And apologies that we went over time, but as you can see, the discussion is just, it's ongoing. And I think there's a lot more we could have tackled here, but thank you for your patience. Thank you for your contribution. Please do join us in the air meet there. The link is there in the box. Do join us. We can continue the conversation for a brief time. We understand and respect everyone's time. Founder Institute program is coming up, and this is a place where we have, I know that the organization as Founder Institute and us as co-directors of the Qatar chapter, we've kind of taken the pledge to empower more women to start, grow, and scale technology-based and technology-enabled businesses, and to show up in the world and to share all their talents and all their dreams and aspirations. Ladies, thank you so much. Astrid Shadid of Annual Investment Meeting, Dr. Luana Zamala of DEMA, Sundas Al-Khuraisha of Educarso, Sophie Smith of Nafta Health, and of course, Nadine Zarini of Harvard University. Ladies, it was a true honor and a true pleasure to share the stage with you. Thank you so much for sharing your energy, your wisdom, and all your experiences. And I hope that today we have inspired someone else to go after their dreams and to speak up and to educate the next generation and to sign more checks if you have the capacity, and to advocate for all the health issues and all the challenges that women face on a daily basis. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Dr. Hanan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and we'll see you in our next event. Make sure to check our links, and we have funding coming up in a couple of weeks. I'll see you then, or I'll see you in Air Meet. Bye for now.
Panel, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.